Oh, good. Huh. Well, I
So
hope they don't have to do surgery.
I
That's
hope so too.
the only time I've ever been in a hospital was to be born and to give birth. So I hope I never have to do that again. It's
Good.
miserable
What
place.
river was Bill Crouch on? He was I got in too late. Where was he?
I was up in Montana on the Missouri River following the path of Lewis and Clark with
Yeah.
guided tour over 100 miles in a canoe and a lot of good history lessons.
Fantastic. We had a friend who used to fish on the Missouri River a lot. So yeah, fantastic. Good for you. Pretty country.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun and very informative.
Bill, what are some of the things that you remember being struck by that you learned about Lewis and Clark that like, oh, whoa, I didn't know that.
One of the things is that the amount of tonnage that they moved up the river and had to haul over the mountains. And in fact, they were going upstream. So they would have to tow it like you would with long ropes. And, for hundreds of miles.
And they would be walking on the shore or
walking on the shore, and the Missouri, at least up at that level, is not very deep, maybe 6 feet average. But they would walk on shore, and then there are certain portions where you didn't have access to the shore, so they'd walk through the water. And then all of the mapping exercises they went through, just how do you live from day to day. And when you get farther up towards Great Falls, Montana, there are 5 very significant falls, and they had to do an 18-mile portage around that. They had to create their own method, go cut down trees and, create axles and wheels all out of wood and put their heavy boats on these things and roll them along for 18 miles, and it's not level ground. So, I mean, the physical ability of these men were incredible.
was Sacagawea on that trip?
Later on, yeah, she was a very trustworthy guide, and actually met her. She had been kidnapped at one time, and they ran across a tribe, and she recognized her brother. Yeah, because she was kidnapped very young.
Oh, and what was the purpose of transporting all those goods? What were they doing it for?
Primarily provisions, for substance. They also were collecting all types of specimens for wildlife and flowers, and they had to write a very, very long log because the president who authorized the trip wanted a very detailed account day by day, and there's an interpretive center in Great Falls, Montana, that you can go through and show you the logs they kept. Very precise, almost day by day. But they couldn't spell very well. They would spell the same word 8 different ways as you go through it. I mean, the English language in those days was pretty primitive.
And like, how many people were in a party?
I don't know exactly. I think it's around 20 or 30. Okay.
And was it unusual to have a woman like Sacagawea?
Yes, yeah, there were no women to start with. By the way, I read a great book about women. The author, very famous, and I'll remember her name, Hannah somebody. Anyway, her premise was that after the Vietnam War, those who had served were not welcome with any great wishes. And the nurses, the military nurses, were hardly recognized at all. In fact, these nurses saw far more combat than most people who were in Vietnam. So this was a novel based upon interviews with various nurses over the years and how they were treated after the Vietnam War, how they suffered, what they went through in their life. I mean, it's a fascinating book. It's called The Women. Hannah somebody, I forget her last name.
V is in Victor? V.
No, the THE Women, WOMEN.
Oh. the
It's
women.
it's a good read, and it kind of reflects back upon how military people were treated after the war, and how the military nurses were basically ignored.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
wonder how accurate MASH was.
I don't know. That was the Korean War.
Right. But I would think it would be similar. Kent, how are you?
I'm fine. How's everyone?
Oh, there's Ken.
Good.
Taffy and me are a little impaired, but other than that, we're great.
Yeah.
Are you in a garage, Ken?
Yes, I am. This is my workshop where I do my stones and my jewelry.
Oh, can you show us anything that you've created?
I can as soon as I figure out how to get back onto the visual.
Oh.
So
all-
continue. Don't wait for me.
Oh, it's
Oh,
all
okay. Taffy, what's going on with Idaho with not allowing women to have abortions even if there's a medical emergency?
Well,
hearing they have to be transported out of state.
yeah, well, actually, I don't pay too much attention to that. My husband is more up to date on that. But today there was an article in the paper that they are going to allow emergency abortions. We just have a really crazy legislature here in the state of Idaho. Yeah, they restrict all kinds of stuff. They're nuts. They're just so very, very conservative in all directions. So I haven't been reading up on it. I disagree with what they're doing. But they're becoming a little more lenient on emergency cases, and that was in today's paper, which I haven't had a chance to read.
What's because the Supreme Court said that they didn't prohibit doing emergency abortions.
Mhm.
They upheld the lower court, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Joel, tell us about your new book. Joel has a new baby coming.
Yeah.
It's called The Era of Catastrophe, 1914 to 1945, in films of Jewish experience from 1899 to 1947. It's an attempt to look at the way in which 5 key films, the earliest being 1899, a film about the Dreyfus Affair, and then the latest films. There's a whole chapter about 2 of the latest films, namely Gentleman's Agreement and Crossfire, which were made both in 1947 and were both big contenders for the Best Picture Oscar because they were the first films to tackle the subject of anti-Semitism in the aftermath of World War II. Anyway, in between, I look at a film from Germany of 1920 called The Golem, How He Came into the World. It's an android story, basically. And in 1937, which is the centerpiece of my book, is about a Yiddish film called The Dibuk, which is about spirit possession. A young man and a young woman who fall in love instantly through a complicated set of circumstances that I can't describe briefly. They fall in love instantly, but her father will not permit them to get married because he wants his daughter to be married to the richest man possible, and it's all about greed in a certain way. And then in 1942, I look at a film called To Be or Not to Be by Ernst Lubitsch, a great German Jewish director born in the Berlin area, who came to the United States in the 1920s and directed films all through the 20s and 30s. And in 1942, made a film about of all complicated subjects, the Nazi occupation of Poland. And it's a comedy, though, and a brilliantly crafted comedy that looks at both the slowness of Hollywood to deal with the subject of the plight of the Jews in that era, and at the same time to essentially issue a challenge to the Nazis in Eastern Europe about America's intention to win the war. And in any case, it's a brilliant movie, basically centered on Shakespeare, but that's also complicated to describe. But the play Hamlet.
How do you
I'm sorry?
how do you connect all those very diverse themes? I can't imagine.
Well, he does it.
No, in all the movies that in your book, how do you connect them?
I let the reader connect them, basically, but they do fit into a pattern of both confronting a subject and at the same time, in certain ways, artfully avoiding the subject. But in any case, I got a very nice review of the book from a peer reviewer that was part of the procedure of it getting accepted, and I don't know, he somehow was very skeptical initially, and he said my book convinced him, so I'm pleased with that. Anyway, but it's a complicated subject. And then, as I said, the final film is about a 10-minute film made in 1899 by one of the great pioneers in fantasy cinema, but who also did movies about current events. He did a movie about the Spanish-American War, about the coronation of King Edward VII. That's right, yeah, and other interesting themes. And he decided to make a film about the effort by reactionary judges in the military in 1894, I believe it was, who arrested him on charges of treason. And he spent 6 years in prison, and then another 6 or 7 years trying to clear his name when he was finally let out of prison. It's a brilliant film that's told all in 1-minute segments. It's about originally 11 segments. All we have now are 10. It's a brilliantly crafted movie, which in fact the filmmaker himself appears in it. There's a wonderful movie called Hugo, kind of a children's science fiction story, which is about Georges Méliès, the Frenchman who made fantasy films, and it's a movie I recommend. I think anyone who watches it will enjoy it greatly. Anyway, that's my book, and we'll see what happens. I'm not sure.
So do you feel like you've given birth to it? I mean, doesn't it kind of feels like giving birth to something outside of yourself, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I've been kind of a mother to this book, and it took me 18 years to write, so I feel
Big
close.
baby.
Yeah, it's a big baby, and I feel a great deal of closeness to it.
It's
Anyway.
pretty exciting when you first get the actual book in your hands.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. I published a book in 1986 on the Bible, which I still have copies of and cherish in certain ways. And I teach two biblical studies courses and 2 film studies courses every semester. And anyway, my book called King and Kin, Political Allegory in the Hebrew Bible is all about the Garden of Eden story, the Abraham cycle, and the story of King David. And anyway.
So is this going to get you promoted to full, Prof?
I guess so. I don't know.
Better.
I'll see what happens with the process. I've long grown indifferent to inner university issues. But I have a department chair who's been very much a good friend and advocate for me, and he wants me to go up for promotion. So
You should,
yeah, I guess so. I will, God willing.
yeah. Joel, could you say a word? I get really mixed messages. Some liberal American Jews are really critical of Netanyahu and the war in Israel, and others say, no, we have to defend Israel at all costs. I know you can't speak for all American Jews, obviously, but what are you hearing about the kind of trends?
Well, it's a very complicated situation, and I am, in fact, very critical of the Netanyahu government. Uh, I believe that the attack on Jews on October 7th was a horrible event, and
Everybody does.
a really, a very dreadful situation, which will probably, throw uh, many nations into turmoil as a result. And I'm not quite sure what the solution is going to be. I know that Netanyahu is being prosecuted for corruption and doesn't want to go to jail. So a lot of that fits into his desire to stay in power as long as he can.
Like
And
Trump.
and we have a similar situation in a certain way in this country. And I don't know. I think I think eventually. I have favored for a long time what we call a two-state solution.
And that's what
Mostly everybody's
Biden's saying.
very skeptical about it. And, it could be carried off in a good way or a bad way. I don't really know. And nobody really knows. But, I think Jews and Arabs in the land between the rivers, you could say, or land between the waters of the Mediterranean and the River Jordan, have long lived in tension, but at the same time they've been neighbors. And I think there are grounds for them to live at peace with one another, and I would like to see that happen. But how you get there is a complicated story. I wrote both a op-ed for the Tufts Daily newspaper, and I wrote a long poem as well, based on a trip that my wife Carolyn made in 1920. I'm sorry, 2023, the beginning of 23, and we were there for only 10 days, but received a tremendous education in the complexities of that area. And I'm very grateful for having had the privilege of doing that. But anyway, it's a really complicated situation, and I'm not quite sure what will happen.
Well, I was glad. Go ahead, Bill.
Conceptually, a two-state solution sounds good, but how do you execute on that?
That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that is part of the challenge, and a lot has to get worked out about security, about hostage taking, about great power alignments, and so forth. I mean, there's all kinds of ways it brings the politics of many nations into the constellation, and how you get the two peoples to live at peace, and I don't know. It's quite terrible. The settler movement has been very destructive toward both the property and the autonomy of the West Bank Arabs in particular, but also in Gaza. They're two very different situations. But if there is to be any kind of accommodation worked out, it would have to be especially focused on the Palestinian Authority and Gaza. I'm sorry, Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. And I see newsreels of bulldozers pulling up olive trees and the herds of sheep being stolen by the settlers, and various kinds of violence visited upon them. It's a terrible situation, and I don't know. Although I am no fan of Hamas, I understand how desperation led to the impasse that gave rise to those attacks on October 7th. But what one does about that is anyone's guess. And, I don't know. But you're asking a really good question. I don't know the answer.
Bill, what would you do if you were the boss?
If I was the boss or Hamas?
The boss, the boss, BOSS.
I think I expressed this before. I think you have to eradicate Hamas. Hamas is the issue. Basically, Gaza's been self-governing for the past 15 years. They've received billions of dollars from countries all over the world, including us, and they've spent it on military needs and tunnels, and instead of developing their coast, which has some beautiful potential resort areas, and creating an independent economy. So to me, that was the second state role. Although and Hamas really screwed it up. And you know, when you look at their, what is it, their mission statement or vision statement, whatever, it's basically that all Jews should be dead. So I don't know how you ever overcome that. You know, but, and even taking out Hamas as a military leadership, most Palestinians, based upon Pew surveys and others, seem to have the same sentiment. And you know, one idea was that Jordan is basically right next door, and aren't they 60–70% Palestinian in
Yeah.
their population?
Yeah,
You know, why doesn't Jordan kind of step in and accommodate these Palestinians who don't really want to live peacefully next to the Israeli nation?
Good
I think the issue is that the rulers in Jordan figured that if they accepted the Palestinians, they'd probably get overthrown, is from what I understand. But I don't know that to be fact.
That's very possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, first of all, I think it has long suited the convenience of Netanyahu and Likud to have a Hamas in power, because it gives them the excuse of we have no partner for peace, because you know, they're not willing to make peace. So why should we? I don't know. I mean, that too, in some way, has to evolve, and I don't know how one gets that to evolve. But
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a very complicated.
You got beautiful real estate in Gaza. They just haven't used it to their own benefit.
To who's on? I'm sorry, who hasn't used?
The Gaza had some beautiful real estate that could have been developed, and they could have been self-sustaining, and but you know, the Hamas decided to use that money for military purposes, and
Yeah.
Which is very unfortunate.
Agree.
How did Hamas get in power in the first place?
They kicked out the PLO, so the PLO can't come back and govern that area, and that was what, Joel, maybe 12–13 years ago.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact year.
If the average Palestinian was really unhappy with Hamas, which it doesn't seem they would be, or are they too afraid to do anything like they were in Nazi Germany? I'm not sure, but you think maybe a bunch of these regular Palestinian citizens would try to get the Hamas out of the tunnel somehow.
Yeah.
You know, or something like that. But
Well,
they haven't.
yeah.
So I wonder where their sentiment is, and they've got to hate. Everybody's got to hate Israel. How can they ever live side by side after what Palestinians have gone through, which is just absolutely horrible. And of course, Israel's gone through, which is absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I don't know what to say about that. I mean,
I don't
other
know how
than, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ann. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, how can they ever live side by side? I know before this all happened, there was one community in Israel where it was almost like a kibbutz type thing where there were equal Palestinians and Israelis coexisting and having a community. I forget what it was called, but it was very successful experiment. I don't even know if it exists now.
Yeah, it's still there. They were on
Yeah.
MSNBC.
Yeah. Well, I've said this a lot of times to people, and it's just a fantasy that if we could roll back the clocks to when this all first happened, was it in October the 7th? Is that right? I can't remember it. I think that's the
Yeah.
date. First of all, the Israeli soldiers and the security was not there when they should have been, or
Right.
a lot of this wouldn't have happened. I don't know where they were. So that's one reason why they're so angry at Netanyahu. And I have no idea about engineering. Bill, maybe you have some engineering savvy that I'm a musician. But anyway, I've often thought, okay, it's full of tunnels and we don't want to hurt the majority of innocent Palestinians that have just been it's just beyond horrible. Why didn't anybody ever think of on the border of just excavating a huge thing to go in through Israel underground and with rate I don't know what it's called, when you can see through what's a tunnel and what isn't. Why couldn't they seek it out and, either, it's terrible to say, but gas those people out or push them out or something from underneath rather than have to do it from above? And they would have saved so many lives anyway.
Are you saying Israel should have done this?
Excuse me?
Are you saying that Israel should have been doing this, or
Yes, the Israeli government, engineers, etc., could have carved out something to get actually into the tunnels without having to bomb buildings and get people out of the way before they could try to get in there to get these Hamas people out? Why didn't they just do it from their side underneath? It would have saved a lot of lives. I'm just asking if that was a possibility.
Well, it sounds that way, but I mean, it's not purely a military situation. It is a political situation. And as I said, I think there are reasons why the Netanyahu government wanted Hamas to be there and surviving and carrying on its business because they could then say, we have no partner for peace. Again,
it's ridiculous.
I'll send out after this meeting, I'll send out my op-ed that I wrote for Tufts Daily, which is not the last word on the subject, but I also wrote a 12-page poem about my visit with my wife Carol to Jerusalem, and where we spent 10 days, mostly in Jerusalem. I gave a lecture one day in Tel Aviv, but I don't know. I learned a tremendous amount just by soaking up life there. And it was my first visit back. I've been to Israel now 4 times, but 3 of the times were all in the late 60s and early 70s. And even mid 70s was my last one, 1977. But in any case, this was my first visit back in more than 40 years. And anyway, it was a very valuable learning experience.
I learned a lot from watching an Israeli fiction soap opera called Sugrim, something like that, about the modern Orthodox. It was fiction, but it was so interesting about trying to eat kosher and follow the rules and dress modestly and not have sex before marriage but still be modern young adults. That Sugrim was a really interesting series for me.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of interest in Orthodox Jews in American TV series about Orthodox matchmakers and people escaping from Orthodox life. And I wonder why people are so interested.
Oh, well, there are many varieties of Orthodoxy also. I've been very immersed in the study of Hasidic Judaism. I actually, the project I've been working on for the past few weeks is to write a foreword to a book on the founder of Hasidism, a book published by a dear friend who just died a few days ago. He had been on his deathbed for many months. And in any case, he published 2 books about the Baal Shem Tov, literally the master of the good name. But he is credited as being the founder of Hasidism back in the 1700s. And
Is it mystical or what? How do you define Hasidism?
well, they were mystics in the sense that they inherited Kabbalah and you know, a whole esoteric system for reading the Bible, reading Torah, and you know, but they developed it into various kinds of approaches to the spiritual life and toward ordinary life, toward one's own relation to reality and so forth. And the Baal Shem Tov was a person who basically argued that you know, we are so used to judging ourselves for our shortcomings, but the real task is to serve God in love and joy. And so he developed this, you could say, ethos of love and joy as a way of approaching reality and other people and oneself. And because Jews of that time had lived in an environment where it was all too easy to think of God as judge and punisher. And he was trying to say there's another side to that. You know, there are ways in which by taking joy in the ordinary aspects of our life and the ordinary things that we do daily and acts of loving kindness and saying blessings over the food that we eat and you know, doing all kinds of things that affirm divinity in the world, we can have a better life and create a better life for other people.
What else besides saying blessings? Because that's something we can all apply.
Well, there's that. There's you know, just not taking for granted the blessings that we have, living a life of gratitude for the blessings that we have. Um, you know, it's harder than it seems, I think. But in any case, the Baal Shem Tov was quite a genius in his way of using the past mysticism of Jewish tradition in a way that would, at the same time, gosh, Bill has just lost his head.
Bill lost his head.
Gosh.
Oh, it's so funny.
Anyway,
Bill, you just lost your head when you went back there.
Again, you have a book out too, right?
Yeah, and Joel is in it. Joel, it's a book called World Religions in Microcosm. And I interviewed families around the world about how they apply their religions, how it's changed since they were children. And Joel's wife was raised Catholic, and you know, Joel was raised Jewish. So there's so many interesting stories in that book. To me, the most fascinating and the one that I knew the least about was an Aboriginal brilliant thinker named Tyson Yunkaporta. That his essay, I don't know if you had a chance to read it, Joel. You probably haven't, but it's fascinating.
oh, I look forward to reading that.
Yeah, and he's amazing, and he was raised in the backcountry barefoot schools, discriminated against because he was Aboriginal. His story is really, really fascinating. Thanks, Kent. It's available in ebook for $10 and print. Kent, can you show us your jewelry?
Oh, yeah, I'll show you some stones that I'm preparing for pendants and sculptures.
Oh,
Can you see anything in here?
we see your face and chest.
Oh, well then, I have to turn it around so that, let me see. How do I change the way the
There's
the way
a
the
arrow.
camera lens?
Yeah.
Turn it over.
No, there's
Yeah.
an arrow in the circle at the bottom. You hit that.
An arrow in the circle?
What if you just flip it over?
What, my phone?
Yeah,
Does that do it?
Yes.
Yeah, except that way I can't see what I'm showing.
We'll stop you when you get there. Right now, you can see your palm of your hand. It's over
Right.
it's over the whole of the camera.
I'm looking for what
Now-
Bill said. I'm looking for the circle with,
We're seeing your face again. That's all.
I know that.
Okay.
Bill, where do I find what you told me to turn it around?
Well, you're on camera.
I'm on camera now. How do I turn it around?
Well, usually there's a little logo, I believe, at the bottom right-hand corner. Let me go to my camera.
Where it says more?
Yeah, we'll try
Oh.
that.
Oh, I think if it says more, I think that's on Zoom. Isn't it?
Meeting
So you're on
settings.
Zoom.
Yeah, that's not it.
Okay. So you're on Zoom, and I'm looking at the camera on the iPhone, where in the lower right-hand corner it does have a arrow with circles, but you're on Zoom.
So, so should I get off of Zoom and onto the camera?
no, because then we won't be able to see it.
then we won't see you.
You
Well,
don't
just-
need to see me. You need to
And
see the
just turn
stuff.
the camera around like you did before, and we'll give you feedback of when you're on the stones.
Well, I can't explain what I'm doing.
Put it in your hand, maybe.
I'll just show you. I like,
We see a lot of stones.
yeah. What I like is I like the
Why didn't you
look of
Just
nature.
hold them up like I'm doing. Why didn't you
Right,
do
right.
that?
Right.
Your hand. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, looks nice.
That's
And
like
get-
for a pendant. I like natural looking and I like combining different things from nature. Like, this is totally natural. And it's interesting, to me at least. Can
Where
you
do
see
you get the
this?
stones?
I get them all different places.
Where do you sell your jewelry?
At gem shows. Here, people, this is popular now. Crystals, they've always been popular.
Oh, that's a beautiful.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. Here's something that I like. I hope you can see it well.
Is it amethyst?
No, it's not. It's not amethyst. I'll tell you in a minute when I remember. It's condor agate from Argentina. And it's just an interesting growth pattern. This is boulder opal. This is going to be for a bracelet. These are interesting shells. They're from Malaysia. They're called melon. I don't know if melon is the name of the animal that lived in here, but I'm going to be using it for sculptures. They're going to stand up and I'm going to have a silver figure inside.
Mm.
How do you spell melon?
What?
How do you spell melon? Like MELON? Or
Yeah, yeah. MELON.
uh-huh.
It's
Oh, they are
Ethiopian melon from Indonesia. And then there's all kinds of stuff. See, what do I got here? I like seashells.
Yeah, we see them. Do you have any finished sculptures or pendants or whatever?
I do, but I don't have them here.
Ah,
I have them where I live.
Are you in your workshop now? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
Mhm.
This is a boulder opal.
ooh,
Oh,
This is
Mm,
this is
that's
what it
beautiful.
looked like when it came out of the earth,
wow.
Mm,
except that it was a lot bigger and there was a lot of waste on it, which I
mm. Is that from Australia?
removed. Yeah. Here's a brain.
What?
It's a brain. Can you see it's a brain?
What is it? A fossilized brain?
No, it's not fossilized. It's from my dog Duke that I had when I was a kid.
What?
Did anyone believe that?
Well, I'm a very gullible person, so yeah, I believe it.
Well, I suggest that you get a little more critical. No, no, this is actually car paint. See the different lines in there?
Oh yeah.
White and black and white and black and stuff. Each one of those was a coat of paint for a car from the Ford company when they used to paint in a spray booth,
Oh,
and the atomized paint would go in the air and come down by gravity, and wherever it landed, it would start piling up. And they used to throw it away until one of the workers at the Ford plant picked it up. Here's another one. He picked it up and saw that he could sell it. And then it became the rave, and all the car companies uh, started doing the same. Now the stuff wasn't going to the
dump.
to the dump, but it was going to end users, and they use it a lot for jewelry.
Hmm.
Well, I don't have any finished pieces here. I'm just preparing my stones for them.
Looks like you have a lot of variety and fascinating inspiration.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That was fun. Anne, have you found a studio yet?
No, but I'm almost at gunpoint for my staff to somehow obtain something somewhere. I just you'd think that there would be a lot of choices, but you know, I guess everybody knows that there's a lot of empty office real estate now in LA because a lot of people are Zooming. Since COVID, they Zoom. They don't need as much space anymore. And of course, office space has really gone up in price because during the pandemic, they couldn't use the space, and they had to. The prices went down, so now they're up, and then there's nobody that can afford the amount of money for the space. And I'm ideally looking for a building where I don't have to do too much soundproofing. That's more of a place with no neighbors or tolerant neighbors. That has that's not brand new. I was looking at brand new places where I have to build out, and I did get some SBA loan money to do the build out, but because our amount of personnel, our student membership has really declined because we had to move and because of COVID and everything. I'm so worried about investing all this money and in building out and then not having enough money to survive the higher rent that I'm expecting without having enough people for income. And I have 35 mouths to feed right now, you know, I have teachers and staff. So and I'm getting older. You know, I'm starting to think, well, should I be doing this? But the business is almost 55 years old, and I feel like I want to pass it on rather than just end it. And it's hard to pass it on or sell it when right now we're not making very much money and we don't have a permanent place.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I'm not sure what to do. I need an advisor to help me out here because I really I don't know. I'm a little bit scared, and that's why I'm feeling a little bit what is it called when you can't move? Starts with a P.
Paralyzed.
Paralyzed. Thank you. I'm feeling a little paralysis here, and I have to get off my whatsits here and do something rather than nothing, because everybody's screaming at me, "Hey, we need to move. We have to have better exposure." Blah blah blah. So right now I'm looking for the place that I was just telling you, that's nearby where I was, which is on the corner, if you know LA still, or remember, because you left, near Pico and Bundy in West LA. That's where I was. And that has offices already built in, because then I just have to soundproof the little office spaces. They're all built in, and I have separate rooms, and then maybe tear out some of the walls for larger rooms, for community rooms, group classes, seminar rooms, a kitchen, blah, blah, blah. But it's a lot of work to put it together. And I'm thinking, it's overwhelming for me. Plus
The landlord work with you at all in remodeling?
the one that at UCLA, I have ins with UCLA, who's very well off, has a lot of endowments, and is buying property all over West LA, including I think you may have read that they bought some property way down in Palos Verdes for nursing and medical stuff. They have tons of money, but anyway, and they're very slow. They don't seem to care about getting back quickly, which is one of the reasons I've lost my interest. But there's this place where graduate students are housed above an apartment. So there's like 420 something graduate students above. The bottom would be the part that I would rent. It would be under an outdoor swimming pool, actually. So that would be good. So my neighbors upstairs wouldn't complain about the drums and loud guitars occasionally. So that looks good and everything. It's a little set back. It's on Santa Monica Boulevard, and but it's completely vacant, and it's been vacant for a long time. They said that there was going to be a gym for children moving next door, which would be very good for us. And they said that next door to that would be a children's dentist.
Perfect.
It would be perfect, but everybody has disappeared, and you wonder why. So it's been open for, I would say, about 7 or 8 years, brand new. I'd have to do all the work, but your question was, would they help me out? And yes, they would actually pay for about half of it.
Oh,
In terms of giving me not the money, but I would have to pay for the whole thing, but they would reduce my
rent.
first 5 years of my 15-year lease that I'm asking for by as much money as they would be putting in, on a monthly thing. So it would lower the price from $17,000 a month to about $12,000 or $13,000 a month. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, why don't I should just teach privately in my home. Click it in. I don't know. It's just that
Bill's a real estate guy. So Bill, got any
Bill.
advice for Anne?
You got any wisdom for they call me Miss Annie.
Have you looked in some of the industrial areas around Bundy and Olympic?
I actually am housed right now in one of those industrial areas.
Okay.
It's on Nebraska Avenue north of Olympic, in what used to be an architectural school. The unfortunate thing is somebody has just bought the property, and they're turning this entire block of industrial stuff into apartments for people,
Yeah.
and I have to leave pretty soon.
Yeah, typically the industrial rents are less expensive than the office rents. And some industrial parks will allow the type of use that you're talking about because it's not disruptive to other tenants.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I should look further in those parts. The
Yeah.
part, but another caveat is parking. Especially if I decide to be in the city of Santa Monica is extremely unreasonable with everything.
Yeah,
They call it the Republic of Santa Monica for that reason. I'd
Yeah.
rather be in Los Angeles, but still, there's schools, public schools, and private schools have different parking regulations, and so you also have to find enough on-site parking, and that is another problem. But I like the industrial idea, so I'm going to look more into that.
So there's a building on the north side of the Santa Monica Airport runway. I forget what street enters there, but it used to be occupied by Gunnell Aviation.
What aviation?
It used to be occupied by Gunnell, Gunnell. It is to the east of Atlantic Aviation. I have never seen anybody in there in years. I don't know who owns it,
oh,
but it's a great location.
oh,
Well,
There
do you know that the Santa Monica Airport is being sold off and will
Well-
not be there any
well-
longer?
Well, they're not, they're gonna tear up the runway in 2028, but I don't know what the status of that particular building will be when the runway is closed.
I'm going to go take a look.
Okay,
If you have any more advice or you have any things that come up, please don't hesitate
you know,
to contact me.
Jeff Wasserman used to have a silk screen business.
Uh-huh.
I don't know exactly where, but I think in that general Olympic Bundy industrial area.
Hmm.
He might have some friends that maybe, or some people he knew. He retired and moved out of there several years ago.
Did you say Jeff Wasserman?
Yeah.
Huh.
He's now out in Somas, which is out by Camarillo.
Wow.
So his phone number is 805-386-0048. I think that's his cell phone. You might ask him.
What should I ask him?
If he has,
Indeed.
he used to be located, I think,
Hmm.
in either I think near Bundy and Olympic, I don't know specifically, but it was an industrial area because he was doing silk screening. He may have friends or know of people that might have spaces that will be accommodated.
Well, thank you. Thank you for.
It's
Thanks.
a far reach, but you know, when
You
when
never
you're
know
trying to
what's
get-
gonna
yeah,
work.
you never know. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for listening to me.
Yeah.
Well,
Whine.
it's a big issue. No, it's a big issue. We want
Yeah.
it to be solved. Last question before we go. What are your hopes or fears or whatever for the debate tonight at 6? Bill, start with you. I know you have opinions.
You know, it's 3-1. You got two broadcasters that hate President Trump along with the president. So who knows what happens, you know? It's certainly, the way it's set up, it is certainly in President Biden's favor. But Trump's attitude was, I don't care what they set up, I'm gonna show up and I'll do what I gotta do. I got a quick question for Joel. Have you read The Rational Bible, the series that Dennis Prager's putting out about Genesis, Exodus, and the other two?
No, I haven't. What is the book?
He calls it The The Rational Bible. So he has a 500 pages on Genesis, 500 pages on Exodus. Those are the only two books I have, but I just wondered if you had read
No,
it or critiqued it. Yeah.
No, I'm curious. I'll look for that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
By the way, I used to teach Dennis Prager's kids.
Is that right?
Yeah.
He has what, 2 boys?
Yeah.
Yeah. But and he loves classical music. In fact, he even was conducted with the LA Philharmonic or Santa Monica.
I'm not certain. I don't know.
Yeah.
And what are you hoping or thinking about the debate tonight?
Well, I think Bill is right about the 3-to-1 thing, but that's okay. It doesn't matter what comes out of their mouth. I think the most important thing is how, not to dwell on what either one of them have accomplished in the past, because nobody cares. They want to know what they're going to do in the future. A lot of people are scared of what the candidates are going to do, and so I'm looking for confident people. I'm looking for respectful people, honesty. I'm looking. Everybody is looking at these 2 older men. We're in the same category, this older generation. So I'm looking for vigor, intelligence, articulate, respectful, and adult behavior. That's what I'm looking for on both of their parts.
Okay.
Look no farther in than the New Yorkers. 1961.
What is that? What is that?
That
What
was
is
our
that?
graduation class.
Oh, the New Yorkers. I could think of New Yorker magazine. Look no farther. You mean Bill should be president of the
Well,
United States?
all of those
Bill Krauss.
qualities you're not
Bill
going to
Krauss.
find in the debate. So those
I don't-
qualities you have to go back to people that you know from way back when.
Well, what happened to cordiality? I mean, in the world of judges, attorneys, politicians, what happened to arguing things in a cordial, respectful way instead of this terrible stuff that's going on now? It's so juvenile and such a waste of our taxpayer dollars to spend days on doing all these weird things that have nothing to do with making a better world.
I think we all can agree we expect civility. Joel, what are you looking for?
I worry about the survival of democracy, and everything hinges on that for me.
Me too.
I'm very concerned about a candidate who says his primary motive for a new term is revenge. I think statesmanship rather than revenge should be a main guiding principle of both candidacies, but as one that I worry about more than the other.
You want to respond to that, Bill?
I'm not sure that Trump actually said he's seeking revenge.
He said it a million times. He's got the 2025 500-page booklet about how to do it, who to replace, how to get rid of this in the Justice Department.
Well, that's not so much revenge. That's probably making an improvement in our government, the way I would look at it. No, I think the current president is probably far more a threat to democracy than his opposition, just based upon the fact that he doesn't abide by the Supreme Court. He doesn't protect the border. He's trying to cancel student debt when the Supreme Court tells him that that's not legal. It's a very authoritative administration that we're living under right now. And then when you try and prosecute the former president on a lot of insignificant charges, to say the least, I think the threat to democracy is more with the current administration than what Trump would bring. So,
Joel?
We may have to agree to disagree. I don't know.
yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah, good. All right, my
Yeah.
years.
What about Kent? You didn't ask Kent.
Yeah, I did. He said that
Oh.
he wanted return to old values.
Oh, okay. All right.
Do you want to add anything else, Ken?
No,
Okay, thank you all for hopping on. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you in July.
Okay, take care.
Thank
Have
Yeah.
fun tonight.
Bye.